Tonight we have study session 3 items. First, I want to talk about investment policy discussion, and that's really just to start the conversation. We're not going to go through that whole thing tonight. Briefly talk about the meeting I have with Tribute. We do an annual discussion on the Gilchrist agreements for law enforcement code, and then we'll finish up with wages and benefits and final budget discussion. So as been brought before on the investment policy, we currently have a purchasing policy that we established several years ago. I reviewed that every year. I really didn't see any changes. It seemed to be working fine. The only one thing I want to clarify is I talked to the town attorney just to clarify on the town board's involvement with items. And basically the role that she has, and she has a lot of clients. One client where the mayor owns the only gas station in town, so where do you get your gas at? So she says the day-to-day operations, she's perfectly fine with it. Meals, if we remember, like Penny used to own the cafe downtown, everybody's paying normal price, you're fine. It's where contracts are concerned with taxpayer money that she's concerned with. Can't do that. So with the taxpayer money, that's the issue. If you have other money coming in like donations, that's a different story. So I just want to clarify that because that's come up once or twice. And the last couple of months I've been talking to Larry about doing an investment policy where I provided the board previously the best resources I found is the legal investments for Colorado local governments by DOLA. I think we put this in Dropbox, didn't we, Mary? Mm-hmm. Okay. Also, the second sample is GFOA, which is Government Finance Officers Association Sample Investment Policy. They're very similar. They're not real specific, they're broad in nature. They basically tell you what the statutes are to follow, the do's and don'ts in general. And then finally I looked at an investment policy that the city of Louisville has, which basically reflects the GFOA sample policy. So you basically did rewrite the book on this. Again, talking to Larry, he wants to provide some information to the board. We're talking a lot about T-bills, which I did spend about an hour this afternoon on the internet reading about T-bills. So I don't know a lot about investments yet, but hollow trust is the only thing we really invest in, and it's very low yield, low return. And we're looking at maybe diversifying the town's financial portfolio with some money, but we haven't talked about anything specific yet. So Larry, do you want to jump into it?
Sure. First of all, I'd like to refer you to a website. It's www.treasurydirect.gov. It is the United States Treasury website at which individuals and other entities can buy Treasury bills and bonds direct from the Treasury. No commission. It has a lot of information on the site aside from the current yields and how it operates and how you can purchase them and redeem them and so on and so forth. Aside from that, I'd like to just point out there are two types of Treasury securities that the U.S. government, the Treasury sells. Bonds, which are 2 years maturity and greater, all the way to 30 years. In the DOLA information we have, one of the restrictions that the town has is you can't invest in a maturity that's longer than 5 years. That's just the rule. I mean, it's by statute. Right. Treasury bills, well, first of all, let me finish with the bonds. When you buy the bond, it has a coupon rate, a stated rate of return, and the interest is paid to the owner every 6 months. And at the end of the maturity date, if you hold it that long, you get your original investment back in full. You buy a $10,000 bond, you get the interest on the $10,000 every 6 months for 2, 5, up to 30 years. At the end of that time, you get your original investment back. Treasury bills work differently. When they go to auctions, the yield on the bill is determined in the auction, and the price that you pay instead of the par price, or, I'll take the example of $1,000 denomination. You don't pay the $1,000. The discount the price that you pay is discounted to reflect the interest rate. So, in all likelihood, on a $1,000 denomination, you'd pay currently today on a 13-week Treasury security, you pay about $9.90 and change, $9.94, somewhere in there. Because the yield, well, I want to go into these 13-week bills. And a strategy for cash management that's called laddering. And I don't know if everyone knows what that really is, so I'll give a brief description. First of all, the 13-week Treasury notes are sold weekly by the Treasury at auction. The theory, or the idea behind laddering these notes, is that you would buy one every week. And I'll just give the example, for 13 weeks. Fill in the blank dollar amount, so that every 90 days, approximately 7.5% of your investment is being returned to you in cash as it matures. 12 weeks into the program, if you don't reinvest the money, you have virtually all but the last one in your hand. Compound interest being what it is, if you don't have a call for the cash, you buy the new one. One matures, you buy the next one for 13 weeks out. So that you're always turning this over. There's no commission, there's no fee, there's no cost of sale, as long as you hold them to maturity. Now, these are liquid, totally liquid securities. There's a market, there's an aftermarket for these securities all the time. They trade in the millions of dollars every day. The current yield on an annualized basis for 13-week securities is a little bit north of 1.2% on an annualized basis, which is about 6 times what the bank is paying in interest currently. My personal opinion is that there isn't any greater risk in owning U.S. Treasury bills than there is putting it in savings and loan.
I agree.
It's quote unquote backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. Some people consider that a punchline, others see it as a pretty secure investment, and it's a way to manage short-term cash. If you don't have a call for the money, and you don't want to lock it up for a longer term, 2 years, 5 years, which is as far out as you can go, you can get a reasonable rate of return and turn the money over 13 weeks into the program, you'd be turning the money over every week. So you'd be getting, again, about 7.5% of your total investment back in cash with the return on top. They also have 4-week notes. I think there's a 1-year bill.
They go all the way to 52 weeks, I was reading the stuff.
Yeah. But I just pick out the 13-week one just as an example. It's easily divisible into 52 weeks. It's 90 days. They're easy to grasp. I'm not suggesting or advocating for that. I'm just putting it out there as an option to enhance the return the town gets on its money that it's not calling on today, tomorrow, next week. If you had a situation where some disaster befell the town and you need the cash today, a couple of things to think about. First of all, if you hired a disaster contractor, for lack of a better phrase, to come and perform work, their billing is 30 days net. So even if they did all the work in one day, their bill wouldn't be due for 30 days, typically. Isn't that right? I mean, it's standard business practice.
A lot of them we have to put money up front, but some are like that, true.
Okay.
They come, we've been doing them both ways.
Okay. Well, in the event that you had that situation, in the time between when they went to work and the time the 30-day net bill was due, you would have somewhere between 4 and 5 of these 13-week bills mature and in your hand. Which gives you, because you don't, obviously not obligated to reinvest it. So if you had a call for the money, they'd be there at least a portion of them would be in your hand before the bill came due. Beyond that, these things are excellent collateral. If you walked into a bank with 9 more weeks of 13-week bills in your hand that were going to mature over the next 9 weeks and wanted to fully collateralize a loan for their face value, there's not a bank in the country that would turn you down. It's a fully collateralized note that will be paid off to them in 9 weeks. They have no risk. It's like you're giving them cash in a suitcase, but you're not going to give them the combination of the suitcase until 9 weeks from now. But they know what's inside.
Right.
I mean, these are very commonly traded, bought and sold. I like the phrase, this is low-hanging fruit in regards to these things. But at the same time, they enhance your return by a factor of 6 over what you're getting from the bank.
As long as you don't have to sell them prematurely.
Well, if you have to sell them prematurely and the interest rates are rising, then you run the possibility that you couldn't sell them for the full face value. That's true.
Right.
There is that risk.
It does put a portion of principal possibly at risk. I'm not saying for sure, but it is a possibility on the aftermarket.
It's a mathematical possibility, yeah. The likelihood is pretty slim. I mean, because you would have to, they have to be holding a gun to your head and say, we need the money today, which would force you to sell them before maturity, and at the same time, it would have to be at a time of rising interest rates, which we're generally in that. The future holds higher interest rates rather than lower.
That's what it appears like to me, too.
I don't think there's anybody in the country who's got their finger on the economy that doesn't see that. The Federal Reserve has sort of stated their intention to do that. So, yes, that is a risk.
But if we didn't put everything in there, we would have a reserve in the event of it. So we wouldn't have to pay a penalty.
Absolutely,
So-
and putting, diversifying a portfolio is the key to any
Yeah.
successful investment policy.
So we could protect ourselves that way.
Oh, yeah, I mean, this isn't talking about taking the entire balance and rolling it into this, in this example, a 13-week treasury bills. You can make that decision as to how much you want to devote to it. That's a bigger decision. Beyond, the parameters of treasury bills, these written investment policies that Louisville and others have done, also is highly recommended by the STOA folks that presented this legal investments for Colorado government's package. And it's totally, it'd be folly not to. You want to have it be transparent policy that gives the board latitude to make prudent investments. So not so restrictive that you could only do this or you could only do that. I mean, there's a myriad of different investments that one could enter into and meet the statute that the town is required.
Once again, what was the requirement as far as time frame? Minimum or maximum?
We can't invest in something over 5 years.
5 years.
5 years. I would think if we wanted to pursue something like this, so as to make it less complicated for us, that we look at taking a portion of the cash we had that we didn't think we were gonna need, and putting it into, maybe probably not 5 years, but at least put it in a 1 year or something like that, because otherwise, it would be a problem if we had to look at rotating this every.
The cost of administering it would probably exceed
What
the
we
yield.
make.
So I agree with
I
that.
beg to differ. I really beg to differ. You could automate it with the Treasury Department, where it automatically buys you, in this case, the 13 week, they automatically buy it for you every week. The administrative, I think it's overstated.
Do we hold them? We don't hold paper anymore, do we? It's all held online?
Yeah, you mean, are you gonna get certificates in hand? No. They're usually held in what they call a street name,
Right.
which in all likelihood, you could do through the bank that you do business with now. All the ins and outs, the money in and out will all be in that same account, granted in a separate ledger. I really beg to differ with you on the administrative costs. They're negligible.
I was talking about administrative in-house.
Oh, well, funny thing you mentioned that. I ran into it digging down through this website that I came across the part that the town itself needs to have a trustee who can act independently on behalf of the town. It was suggested to me that the bookkeeper,
David Green.
yeah, David Green, could do that as part of his normal course of business. Follow me? I mean,
Yeah.
you can't,
And it's certainly, I'm open to it. I mean, I would,
it's just a Treasury Department requirement that the town cannot have the account direct with the Treasury themselves. They have to have a trustee in between.
I wonder if does he have to be a fiduciary?
That I can't answer. I doubt it.
I would think he'd have to be, if we're dealing with town money, it'd have to be somebody who's a fiduciary, if he's gonna be a trustee of it.
It has a degree of liability.
Yeah, stand correct. Probably would.
But, yeah, it's, my opinion, it's worth looking at. Maybe we could start with the short-termers, or think about the short-termers. A one-year bond, really, is the interest rate attractive enough on a 1 year?
On a 1 year?
Yeah, that it would justify it?
I'll quote it to you.
It's like we have a lot of money sitting in our savings for the sewer, the lagoon fund and all that, right? Where we could put it in that because we know we're waiting for the state.
Can we do it with an enterprise fund?
Based upon the policy, you can do it with retirement funds, enterprise funds, and also the general fund. There's various funds.
Okay.
Obviously, we don't want to do pension funds, we really don't have one.
Feel free to put my pension into it.
But I was thinking, like Fro was saying, I was thinking of our system investment fees, there's $300,000 or $400,000 with water sewer, not do all of it, but do part of it. We haven't touched those forever, but once we get notice from, for example, from the state on a permit, it's not gonna be right away. We have a 5-year, I think a 5-year compliance to do something, we go so. It's taking us 5 years to get permit review. And then the general fund, we have just over $500,000, almost $600,000, that we call it a trust, that's not being used as part of the general fund budget. That's what I call the savings account. And then there's different special revenue funds, but you can also use your capital improvement fund, but right now, we're maxing that out as far as expenditures. So,
My suggestion would be take $100,000 out of the general fund, not the enterprise, but the general fund, and see where it gets us. See what it does. I mean, if speculating is one thing, if we see what our experience is, how much it costs to administer it, if it costs to administer it, we need to find all this out before we start dumping a lot of money in. So I would suggest,
Except for David Green, whatever he's gonna charge us.
precisely, and, you know, it's whatever time it takes and stuff like that. I would suggest taking $100,000 as a start and see if everybody's pleased with the performance.
And then do we take that and split it up to say $20,000 investments and stagger them?
I would defer to somebody who's more knowledgeable, right there.
He's done so much research.
depends on the interest, which higher interest.
Right. To answer your question, Steve, I don't have a quote on the 1 year. The 5-year today is traded at 2.06. The 13-week traded at 1.265, which is actually 8 weeks ago, it was barely over 1%. Let me back up for a second. I think really the first priority that needs to be considered is the establishment of a written policy. It's
Oh, of course.
before you do anything, before you go and dip your toe in the water, have a policy that is clear, is concise, it's something that you'd be proud to present to the public, it's transparent, it protects all of us, number one, and it makes it clear that the policy is prudent, conservative, and protected. Now, it's not insured like a savings and loan deposit. Your biggest risk is the United States government is going to be overthrown, and they're going to not honor the debt of the First Republic. Essentially, that's where your risk lies.
Right.
Some
Hey,
people
Chinese
perceive-
aren't worried, I'm not worried.
Some people perceive that risk to be higher than others, but,
Right.
you know, in a real sense, if you're only out 13 weeks, you're gonna know something's up halfway there.
So you're an advocate of the short term?
Well, I think,
Well, you draw more interest on the 1 year compared to the short term.
well, you get more interest the longer you go out. That's
Correct.
true. But you need to weigh that against the fact that you're in a market where interest rates are rising.
And when interest rates go up, bonds go down.
They act, exactly, they're in reverse of each other.
Yes.
Now, if you're convinced, I'll use your $100,000 example, you're convinced that you're not going to call on the money for 12 months, and you can live with that, then your potential for loss is zero. Because you're gonna hold it to maturity, and they're gonna pay you back all your money, plus interest.
Right.
The longer you go out, 5 years, There's people that buy 10s and 30s.
Correct.
The 30-year note, well, the 10-year, you know.
I was thinking a bond would probably be easier for the town to deal with, at least initially, because you do get your interest payments, and you know what your principal is gonna be at the end. It might be easier to deal with initially. See what I'm saying?
How do you mean?
Because you don't have to worry about watching it as closely, because you know when you're going to get your payments and stuff like that. To where if you're laddering 13-week ones, that takes a degree, you have to be paying attention to that.
I don't follow, because at the end of 13 weeks,
Yes, but you still have to watch it, you have to keep track of it and stuff like that. Putting it on autopilot is something I don't know that we could really do. I understand what you're saying, the Treasury Department does, but I'm not totally convinced that we would get away with that long-term, putting it on autopilot like that. That's why I was thinking the bonds might be a better idea.
You can take it off autopilot at any time
Right.
you want.
But doing the bonds would be simpler, would it not?
I don't think fundamentally there's any difference.
You don't think so?
No, and the reason I like the staggered laddered idea is that you're constantly taking advantage of the new rate with 1/13 of your money. If you buy an equal amount every week for 13 weeks, and then at the end of 13 you take weeks 1 and buy another one, so that you're constantly turning them over. You're always taking advantage of the new, what I would predict would be higher rate. There's no certainty to that. True.
It looks good, I agree,
Well,
it looks like 0.25%, but we don't know, you're
Well,
exactly
no, I
correct,
mean,
we don't know.
You know, I might as well try to predict rainfall as interest rates, although you're in a time of historically low interest rates. I mean,
What is the rate right now?
Artificial.
my dad bought, well, you make the comment about artificial or not. The truth of the matter is, it's just the math that's right there. My dad had a higher mortgage interest rate in 1953 than I'm paying today.
Yep.
That's not gonna be there for much longer. How it got there, why it got there, who may have manipulated it, is not really the point. The market is headed upwards, many people think. And with the idea of rolling them over, of this laddered idea, you're always getting rid of the old rate and getting the new rate. In a time when rates are rising, that works to your advantage.
Well, if we're gonna need to have a fiduciary handle this. I don't know, David.
I don't know about that.
I don't know if he would qualify as that. Probably a different area than what he's in.
Probably.
So I would guess he would. So if we have to have an actual fiduciary handling this, we'd have to take a look at what the cost of that's gonna be as compared to what our additional yield's gonna be. So, I guess, at that point, we'd be putting it out to have fiduciaries come in here and tell us what they could actually do for us and what it's gonna cost us. Because we've got to go to that extent of getting them, which it sounds like we do. Then we'd have to look at, they're gonna invest it for us, it's gonna cost us something to have them deal with it. And what's the total yield gonna be?
Larry, did you say that there's other communities doing Louisville?
Other communities, excuse me?
That other communities, are they doing that? Are they investing their
I couldn't
capital?
speak to what other towns are doing. I've read the investment policies of some other towns. Was it Brighton, I believe? But they're in a different ballpark because they're investing millions. It's like, when you have an entry fee that's that big, 25 million or more, there are a lot of options that open up to you that aren't available when you're talking 500,000. And 500,000 sounds like a lot of money, and it is. My only point about this whole idea is to enhance the return that you're getting. I keep on thinking about what my dad told me years ago, that you're gonna work really hard in your life to save money after you pay all your bills and so on and so forth. Once you get to the point where you can save some money, the idea is to make that money work as hard for you as you had to in order to create it in the first place. To accept 0.2% on $500,000, I think there's better options.
Yeah, I agree with you.
You know, some that suggested tonight are 6 times the return. It's low-hanging fruit.
And I know the fire department's done something like, not the bonds and stuff that you talked about, but they have all these funds, they put them off, instead of having $300,000 or $4 million here, now they have a $10 million fund, drawing more interest on $10 million than they do $300,000 or whatever it is, you know, so.
There are options to pool your resources with other communities. And that's in this pamphlet as well.
Yeah, it's talked about. Call a trust is one of those pools, basically. A lot of communities use call a trust, and that's how that money is generated.
Well, I just make one more comment. This isn't in any way to be construed to be critical of previous policy or of this board or any board before it. It's just a suggestion that you could do better.
Well, to be honest, Larry, this is about the first time we've had anybody, right, Mike? Mike was a former mayor, so I mean, he knows better than anybody.
Congratulations are in order for that position. Now, it's incumbent as part of the fiduciary responsibility of the board to prudently get the best return you can get with what you have. It's revenue without taxes, without tax increase.
So how, the best way to move forward on this is probably do some checking with David Green and with College Trust and see just what our first step forward should be before we even talk about policy, because we don't even know.
Well, the recommendation from DOLA and GFOA is, number one, you talk to your legal counsel, and you talk to your accountant, so both of them, to see what rules are out there that we need to be aware of, what costs are associated. And I do want to talk to some other communities to see, and I call Louisville too, because Kendra also represents Louisville, to see if they've been doing it for a while, what kind of investments are they making and why. You know, we need to, and I think there's some communities out there that would give us some guidance without charging us for it as well. I think that'd be the first step. But before we do anything financially, we have to have a policy in place. That's
We need to have a policy.
That's step one.
step one. And I like diversity. I mean, if you want to take your water and sewer investment funds and put them into a 1-year bond or 2-year bond, that's less risky because those are so restricted for what they can use. If the tornado hits, you can't use those monies unless you're building new infrastructure.
Correct.
General fund, I like, my recommendation is what Larry's saying, the shorter term returns. So that money's fairly liquid all the time. But we need to look, you know, I looked at T-bills, but there's other items out there. Louisville gives a whole list of different kind of money markets and different kind of funding sources that they use. So I'm still worrying about this myself. That'd be the first step, just find out some more information.
Money markets would probably be a little riskier, would they not?
Probably. I would think so. We're covered by statute. One thing I noticed through the policy is that, and eventually we'll get back to the conversation, municipalities and cities that go home rural don't have to follow the statute requirements. A little bit more diverse and risky, but they hire professionals to manage those funds that they have. And when I first thought of the idea before I talked to Larry was, the assistant manager from Brighton told me they use an investment firm, PFN. And when I spoke to them, their minimum client has to have 25 million to invest.
See, that's what I was
Hopefully we'll get
about.
there.
You know, we get a fiduciary in here and say, oh, we wanna invest $500,000 with you, and we wanna keep it super low risk, T-bills, he's gonna say, I can't do anything.
Yeah.
Cause I'm not gonna, you're not gonna make enough money, I'm not gonna make enough money.
We gotta do that to where it's very affordable for us,
Yeah.
obviously. Okay.
I think you'll find that if Mr. Green can act as a trustee with the Treasury Department, because it's just their requirement. I mean, any of us individually can open an account overnight and buy them at the next auction. And why they have that restriction, I couldn't say.
Well, the policy talks about either designated trustee or designated custodian, but it doesn't go into detail what those people
Right.
are required to
And
have.
that's maybe something the council could
Yeah.
clarify. But I really want to know, I believe in my gut that the cost of acquiring treasury bills, bonds, should be next to nothing. And anybody who's charging you any money to do that is ripping you off, frankly. Because it's just a few strokes of a keyboard on the Treasury website connected to your bank account number and routing number. And it's child's play, really, anymore. And so I can't see how anybody can justify a fee that would negatively impact your return in any measurable degree.
Well, that's the kind of information we need.
Right. Certainly.
So the first thing to do is,
I'll look into it.
in all your spare time.
Come back. Probably the first week of January, since we have our next meeting next Tuesday, we'll have enough time.
Right.
I can call
Forward.
Louisville directly and just tell me about your program and junior fiduciary and so on.
You have nothing to lose and a lot to gain. You know, and it really doesn't take that much effort. And talking 6 times the return on short-term bills, 10 times as much on a 5-year.
Well,
A 2-year, I understand.
and frankly, what do you think the bank's doing with their money?
They're going,
Yeah, they're
they're loaning it
they're
at
doing it.
15% so somebody can buy a car.
So,
Okay.
does anybody have anything else on this?
Bring back to the board again.
Great.
Okay, the second item is the Gilchrist Law Enforcement Agreement, specifically the Code Enforcement Agreement. As I mentioned, Trudy and I, Trudy Pearson, the town administrator in Gilchrist, we meet annually to discuss the 2 contracts, and I spoke to Carl about that as well. She feels that the board over there is very happy with the law enforcement contract overall. They're seeing the officers quite well. They're sending more clients to court over there, so to speak. She does want to get to some point, which I'll come back to, about having some stationed over there on a regular basis, but I'm going to bring up something else first. We then talked about code enforcement. Travis has been doing the dual role. We, under this contract, set a set monthly fee based upon estimated hours. Travis, because he farms, he still gets a lot done, but it's, during the fall and the spring, it's not always consistent. This week, he spent more time in Gilchrist to get caught up because there are more issues to address. And then he and I talked this week about issues here. What I want to recommend next Tuesday at the board meeting is to modify the agreement to where it's just a reimbursement of cost for his hourly hours that he actually spends over there. Because this last month, he didn't spend a whole lot of time, but they're still paying the monthly fee.
If we go by the hour, how do we ascertain
He marks on his time sheet, if he stays with Tuesdays and Thursdays, like one Tuesday, he can only do 2 hours, and then on Thursday, he'll do 10 hours.
They're okay with that?
They're fine with that.
Okay.
And it's very simple, and we're not gonna be out of anything, we're just gonna actually bill them for what time is actually being used. So they'll still pay their share.
And that time encompasses the vehicle and all that stuff like that?
Per the contract, it's a little over $21 an hour, and it's about $4 or $5 more an hour than we're paying them, so there's built in for that. Because we're not really charging anything for uniforms, I mean, there's some basic uniforms that we have, and he drives a little towards Florida.
Oh, you're driving the Exploder?
For right now,
Okay, okay.
we'll probably sell it. So going back to law enforcement agreement, one thing Terry brought up, and I talked to Carl about, Mayor, you and I talked about it years ago when we took on that service. And I'm not asking the board to do anything right now. What I want to do is do a 6-month review. During budget, we've talked about adding on 6 more miles of highway, 12 miles of lane highway, basically, going both directions. Carl and I was talking this afternoon about already increased traffic accidents that they've already worked this year compared to last year. And some of them, a lot of them are, not a lot, but more and more on those stretches of highway.
Thanks, Tom.
Again, Trudy brought up, I'm not arguing with her, we provide a contract of 40 hours a week. What they were hoping for is because we absorbed their officer at that time, which we no longer have that officer, we're back down to 7, we did have 8 at one point, is that they would like to have more, not really office hours, but more dedicated time, not just hit and miss patrol. I said, in the totality of everything, I'd like to wait 6 months. I asked Carl to start tracking, which he already has, the changes that we may have, not just in Gilchrist, but not really Gilchrist, but Lens highways. Especially with winter coming on, I think it'd be a good assessment to talk about this spring. But I do want to do kind of a mid-year review in 2018 about the police department to see what their staffing levels are and if they're adequate. Like again, it's not like I'm promoting in the way I am, but not yet. I want to provide facts to the town board. Because we're still at the staffing level we have been since I started 14 years ago. I don't know how long they were at 7 officers before me. Gilchrist pays $115,000 a year for one officer, basically, for 40 hours a week. That's a lot of money. They need to buy a car and recruit a new officer every single year, which we don't want to do. School district pays about $160,000 a year in our budget for 2 officers. That more than compensates for those 2 officers, more than. So I want to be fair as a community regarding law enforcement services. So I want to just bring it up and get it in everybody's mind, and then I'll keep bringing it up. Then the spring I want to talk about it. Mainly. So, Carl, did you have anything to add on that?
I don't remember, what was our police budget this year? 6?
You have right there.
Yeah. No, I didn't find it.
Police is 658. 2016, it was 683. This year, Carl's anticipated to spend about 567. Not bad. Big year short staff. Another thing I want to do is see if Carl can get full staff and actually go 3 or 4 months on the full staff, see how that looks on the streets as well. Because we're still hiring 1 officer, and 1 officer started today. The last officer in FTO, Kathy, is now on her own. So Carl's still back on admin hours Monday through Thursday, but he's still covering the streets as well.
I showed the cost of policing our town at $383. That's less than before we started doing these contracts, is it not?
383.
Am I wrong here? Well, I probably am. I can't add or subtract with the darn.
The total public safety is 782. You look at about 5,500 for crossing guard, another 118,000 for SRO.
Well, I figured $275,000 for the SROs and the Gilchrist contract. Is that right? 160 for SROs and 115 for Gilchrist?
Yeah, in all fairness, if you go back 3 years before the Gilchrist contracts, we're saving a ton of money to TV.
That's
Because
exactly
those
what I was
contracts
asking.
are backfilling our budget. I kinda have a problem with that sometimes, just because, I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, we got contracts with both entities, and the idea is not necessarily for us to make money off these contracts, so I understand what you're saying. We need to make sure that we're providing what they're paying for.
One concept I brought up with Trudy and Carl is, if we get to that point where we bring that 8th officer back, that 8th officer could spend 20 hours a day, take time to go across, satisfy that, and the other 20 hours they can do road patrol, take the highways, especially during rush hour. So it's kind of working both ways. So,
14 years ago, we didn't have contracts with Gilchrist, and we have the same amount of officers as we do now, but we have 3 dedicated elsewhere.
yeah, those,
So we have half the police force? as
No.
were-
No, we have more
14 years
officers.
ago?
no,
No, we don't have half the officers.
when I started in '04, it was myself
Uh-huh.
and 6 line officers, so there's 7 of us.
Okay,
That's what Carl has now.
okay.
And then he has 2 SROs paid by
In
the school.
addition.
2 SROs paid by the school, and then we have a 3/4 time code officer.
Okay,
And those are the contract people.
understand.
So we didn't lose
No.
officers
I
per
think
se.
that- yeah.
Yeah, we picked one up, and then when that vacancy, we just didn't fill it at the time,
Correct.
12 years ago.
And that was my point is before we started the contracts and everything, we are at a point now where we are less out of pocket than we were then. And that was, I'm not trying to make any point, other than I was just trying to clarify for myself. Sorry, I probably made this unnecessarily complicated. But it is something to think about in the long term.
Okay. So I want to bring this back up, I just want to mention this before the first of the year. The last thing is, I will put out the packet on Thursday or Friday when we send it out, the final draft of the budget, and I will, because there's been multiple copies out there, and I will mark this final, so everybody's looking at the same paper. Really hasn't changed, only thing that changed is Diane Norman sent me, the library board gave raises over in the library, so I had to agree to build that into the library fund for Gilchrist and Platteville. Second thing is they had some part-time employees, like at $9.75 an hour, they agreed to push that up to over 10, because January 1, the new minimum wage law goes into effect, it's 10 something. So we have to meet those thresholds. So we as a part-time people or seasonal, we have to keep that in mind, so that's not that big a deal. Something we had, I put on the capital projects we discussed, but really there's no changes at all. Right now, we're still staying at just over 20,000 in revenues over expenditures. And you'll see this on Friday when I send it out to you. By the way, do you want an electronic copy on Friday, or do you want a paper copy?
Put it on, it's not a Dropbox right now, though, is it?
No, it's done previously. This is a long document, I don't know if you want to read through the
Give me
document.
a paper copy.
Paper copies.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do front and back, and it's only about
Right.
20 pages.
Yeah.
And it is something that during the course of the year, you may want to refer back to.
Yeah, this will be your draft, and then we'll put this in the final book when we're done. So,
So everybody but Troy?
I'm fine with it
Paper?
electronically, yeah.
Paper, please.
I'll just read Steve. Save us some paper.
Take mine.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's gonna do, not to mark it up.
so that's where the budget stands right now. The only thing that's left to discuss is, we talked a little bit about benefits. As far as that's concerned, Mary helped me, or Mary did the work required. We kept hearing about Milliken's county plan. What it comes down to is the county plan, we did get, Irene worked on getting an estimate, and the costs are about the same. I think I brought that up to the board. But with the county plan, what Milliken does, it's not their plan, it's what Milliken does, they pay 95% of the employee. Town of Platteville pays 100%. But the difference is they pay 90% of the employee and spouse, and 85% of family. That's why an officer over there is only paying $200 a month, give or take. One officer here would be $1,500 for a family. So that's the difference. So I just want to say.
They don't have a longevity plan, do they?
They don't have longevity, but that's what they do. Okay. And that's solely for the insurance, my understanding. So,
Is that for all the Milliken County employees as well?
full-time. I think they're still hiring officers too, probably. The last thing is, I'm gonna open up to the board, is there wasn't a conversation on any consideration for wages for 2018. I told the mayor that I wasn't going to push anything this year, and I want to open up to the board, because I know some board members want to have this conversation. Last year, the board, with Public Works and Police hourly employees, received $1 increase. The administration received 50 cents, and seniors and recreation. I don't think salary did anything. I don't recall salary doing anything. Not last year.
Department heads?
We focused on the hourly employees last year. But 2 years ago, salary did.
I thought we did.
Discuss that. Kind of like that, Dave's did too. Our change, but.
All department heads in parity?
Hmm?
Are all department heads in parity? I mean, are they relatively equal in pay now? Is that?
Not yet.
Okay, but we are working towards that.
I want to work toward that.
Okay.
I
thought that was part of it.
What the mayor's mentioning, as I had a conversation with him, is I like the idea, looking at David and Carl and Mary, not them specifically, but their positions, to get to a point where we're paying all of them very equally, based upon the level of work they do. I think that's very fair. I know Carl Harvey in the South does that, and I want to work to that point. And I think that's, in no disrespect to any of the department heads, but I think all three of their jobs are very vital to the community. And,
It would be difficult to live without any one of those departments.
on the police side, Carl has to go through more training and so forth, but I know Blood Person and, especially with the town clerk, they have their own sort of. Mary's a master clerk, for crying out loud. You don't see that every day of the year.
No, you don't.
Well, master clerk.
Yeah, she put in a lot of time to get that title.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You don't see it, but there's a halo over there.
Yeah, we have a public works director that served 20 years in wastewater management, and he served the last 8 years here. So we've got some pretty viable experience. And Carl, even though he's a new chief, has been here for the last 14 years, give or take, with us. So. But I want to open up for conversation with the board this time. If they want to talk about it.
So, you were talking about holding wages steady at what they are right now?
What do you mean?
So you said you haven't proposed any changes.
Last year, I pushed for wages, and I said if we didn't bring in more revenue than expenditures, I would not push for wages in 2018. That's what I told them there. And we do have increased revenues, but it's not by much. And I do think that employees should get something every year, I do, but I did make that comment last year. And our revenues, and it was a gamble. I did look at the numbers. If the board did a 2%, it would fit our budget. If they did a 3%, it won't. Because we have about a $1.025 million payroll minus the library. I did the math this afternoon.
When you're looking at giving pay raises, are you doing it based on merit or longevity? What's your, and it's based on the merit skills that they've performed over the last year, 12 months?
First year we did that, we used a percent breakdown. And that didn't work because it doesn't work unless you give it 4%, because it's a 4-point scale. So it just didn't work. So what I did last year is if they met a minimum threshold, then they got the basic amount. And then some employees can go above and beyond, we do consider them for more. And that's a discussion between my department heads and myself. But we stay within the budget. We do.
And that was what, that was really, last year's budget had that in mind, that gave more than we would have ordinarily, but considered it for a 2-year period. And that was asked and answered several times last year during budget. Now, Larry's not a part of that. Larry was attending, but he didn't make those decisions.
So I speak with my attorney.
So, But the rest of it, yeah, it should have been pretty evident to everybody precisely what we were doing. So if we consider anything else this year, it would be giving an additional raise in addition to what we had agreed to.
And part of what last year is, one of my goals is to reestablish the minimum standard. Officers were making 17 and a half, 18 bucks an hour. Right now, officers' starting wage is 20 bucks an hour, which is still about 4 or 5 bucks less than their surrounding counterparts. Public works is around 15, 16, depending on job experience. It wasn't 12 and a half. I got a 20-year-old kid making more than that. And we can argue about cost of living, indexes and all that kind of stuff. I don't dive into that. I know there's all kinds of numbers out there. I just know when I talk to my wife, everything she buys every year goes up. My cell bill, my Atmos bill, my health insurance went up 4.9% this year.
Everything in that market basket is increased.
My car insurance went up 12%. So it just depends. It just depends on how you look at it.
Right.
You know, so.
Now, the people who do stay get a significant increase at 3 years.
$200 a month.
The longevity.
That's what the longevity is for.
Not everybody picks up health insurance anymore. The government does, but in the private sector, there's a lot that don't. So, you know, a lot of this, some of this is hard to read.
It's a benefit for.
It's everywhere, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great benefit for health insurance if you're single and you don't have a family.
Right.
So is there a dollar amount that you would like to have, or just a percentage, or what are we talking about as far as giving you the flexibility to give you to increase wages for your employees?
What I like to do is, I've talked to some of the town managers, and I'll bring up Brighton, this is what Brighton did last year. They build in, as long as their revenues came in over expenditures, they build in a 1.5% to 2% merit. And that was just automatically built in the budget. The board pre-approved it.
I like that as policy.
And that was a policy decision they made. Then, based upon revenues and evaluations,
You have merit and performance.
they got performance based upon evaluations up to 3%. So some employees got 5%, some employees got 2%, because they were rookie. You don't get a raise unless you work there for 6 months. You know, which is fair. So,
What if we were to just flat out say, you've got an additional 2%, you use it the way you see it best being utilized?
You may give Troy a number like 20,000.
Well, if we're gonna increase the budget by 2% or 3% or whatever,
On the wages.
to say, you have this 2%, then you can decide who your best employees are, who deserves a raise, who doesn't. I mean, I don't believe in, even though I probably work in this system that does, but, you know, I think people need to be paid and give them merit based upon what they've done. I don't believe everybody deserves a merit, because there are people who don't. Now, I'm not saying that we have any of those here, I hope we don't. But I think if we as a board say, okay, give them all 2%, we don't know all these workers. You and your department heads do. If we were to just give you the budget to decide who you want to give raises to, how much, one may merit 5%, one may merit 0. You know, that puts it in you who's dealing with them on a daily basis, puts it in your hands to decide how best to utilize it.
I don't mind
Now-
doing that for 2019, but I agreed to a contract of 2 years with the increase.
That's right. We
I-
agreed to a contract last
I am
year.
not going to approve additional.
Okay.
And I'm not gonna approve additional ones.
And I understand that, but I also want to point out that the state of Colorado is one of the most expensive places to live right now. I don't know if you all have looked at what it costs to rent an apartment a ratty little piece of junk apartment in this area.
So we gave large raises last year based on covering for 2 years. And some.
I mean, every year expenses go up, mine goes up. Fortunately, I do work for a company that my salary goes up also, but.
Well, we compete against everybody for employees.
And so does everybody else.
So does everybody else, that's right. And
LaSalle
everybody
is
else.
paying top dollar,
And they're still
and
losing
a
out.
short time ago, they were advertising for public works employees.
Well, we're all,
Not everybody's gonna stay.
even if we pay the most, we're always gonna be looking for somebody.
That's
Because
right.
that's just an
That's
everyday,
right.
life
Right.
happens. But if we try really hard and we make this a place, it's not only about money. It's money and happiness. Those are what keep people around.
But we're right in there with the wages of the other.
Right.
Higher than some and lower than some.
That's right.
That's right, we're medium.
I mean, we do, that's the argument every year. One year, we gave huge raises because everybody was in the poverty line, so we brought them all up. And then the next year, well, they really need more money.
Well, but that's the
So we
cost
did
of
it-
having employees.
You know what, that's right. And the cost of having employees is having employees to do their job for us also.
And do you believe they're not?
I do believe they're not.
I don't really honestly
I
think that's who
don't know where you come up with that.
Well, I do.
I'm not dissatisfied with anybody's work in this town.
I'm really proud of the people
That's,
that have worked.
well, you know,
there.
that's personal opinions, and that's why we all have all personal opinions. I do have a problem with some employees in this town.
So that's not really like our job. Our job is to
But it's
talk
my
about
job
the
to
money.
give them raises, right?
Well,
Is that what you're asking me to do, to give them a raise?
Our job is to make sure that we responsibly give Troy the tools
Well, I think we
he
did
needs
last year.
to work.
We did that last year.
And that's okay, that's
And they
fair.
said last year that we're gonna do okay for 2 years. 2 years will come up in 2019. We can go ahead and give them a raise then.
If you wanna do it yearly, that's fine, then let's, in 2019, start doing, yearly.
Right.
So
If we
last
don't
year,
like the 2-year, but
I
that
guess-
was a trial last year,
so
and now.
last year we said, we're giving you these raises, these are good for 2 years.
That's right, we
Yeah.
agreed to that.
I asked numerous times,
Mhm.
is this for 2 years? And
And
everybody
everybody
voted
agreed.
for it. Everybody
Is that
approved
the
it.
understanding of the employees? Was that told to them?
That was,
Yeah, I don't know, I'm just,
that was
I
the
had
budget.
I had those conversations,
See?
it was strong possibility.
okay, I'm just asking a
I
question.
did police and public works specifically.
Okay. So they
And I
understood
didn't
that that was
debate
the
it,
deal.
I just approved it.
Right.
It's decided annually, but that was a discussion.
But look at what's happened over, especially in our police force this last year, the turnover we've had, because they're getting offered more money to go to other communities.
LaSalle
so that's
just had
something-
somebody that turned over.
So that's something we definitely need to consider as a
Small
responsible
towns
board.
are always a stepping stone to other, it's the way it has always been, and it's the way it's always going to be. We're a stepping stone to somebody better.
I've never personally liked the excuse that that's the way it's always been, that's the way
Well,
it's
it
always
is
gonna
the way
be.
it's always been, and it is the way
That's
it's
okay.
going to be.
But that's not good enough for me
Well, that's
personally.
you.
So something I
But we
think we need to
implemented
look at.
longevity to try and encourage people to stay.
That's right.
It works for some.
I mean,
it
we
doesn't
had
work
this
for
huge
others.
argument about the longevity. And so they're getting it, so, like she said, if we're gonna give them raises every year, we should say every year we're gonna give them raises. We shouldn't say something one year and then go back.
So I don't personally remember that, but I'm not gonna disagree
Well, you
with
didn't
guys.
vote against it.
So, something we need to consider is when we lose employees, and yes, we're always going to lose employees, that happens, that's fine. Well, we have huge turnaround. How many police officers, Carl, did we lose this year? Did we turn over this year?
Not really fair. We had a department turnover with a new department head. And he has
Okay.
different
Yeah, you can't
philosophy
compare that to
than
what
mine.
I-
That's okay,
And
that's
so
fair.
That's not what we're really fair.
So,
That's since the beginning of the year, we got a quarter.
okay, so we have to, let's see, I have numbers here. We pay them, lost man hours when we're looking for somebody. We have, 2 weeks after they're rehired, we've got, a cost. This is for admin and public works. Employment testing and training has, cost us $7,200. Uniforms, you have to set that up, about $250. Set of passwords, IT, so on and so forth, $150. Benefits paid to the leaving employees, and so on and so forth, all part of normal operations. We're looking at $10,000 to $12,000 per employee.
And we discuss this every year.
That's right, every year.
This is the same every year. It's factored in every year.
I guess my question is, why, I mean, if you have employees who deserve more money, or could go someplace else and make more money, why would we just sit back and begrudge them their worth?
The better the
Because
better.
Money isn't the final say. There are a lot of factors.
Money is the
in
final
changing.
say.
No, it is not.
It is.
It's a very
People,
subjective
that's how
opinion.
people,
For
that's how
family, it
people
is.
grade their job, grade their worth.
And we are not
I'm-
below other towns.
That's
We
right.
are below some, and we are above some. We are not below everybody else. We are not, when we have job openings, we have multiple applicants, good applicants. We have had really good hires recently, and they don't seem to object to what they're entering into for the wages they're getting, and they're good.
That's right, they sign contracts with us. They know what they're getting into when they get hired with us.
They're not
exactly
saying-
what's expected of them.
We're not lacking for applicants for jobs. That would be a sign that we're not paying them.
Well, it depends on the job. Police department, we might get 8 or 10. When I was chief, we'd get 30 to 40. But everybody's hiring right now. Yeah.
But I like the last hire that we had,
Yeah,
and the SROs are coming in qualified.
we're fortunate because, we try to attract people who want to be here, who just
Right.
don't want a job. That's not easy. That's not easy at all.
No, that takes a lot of hard work by some other dedicated employees.
And, Carl and I talked, David and Mary, looked at other ways to incentivize, we're still looking at that. That's not putting money in their pocket, obviously. But you're right, a lot of employees who have stayed here long-term because they like it,
It's not the money,
they're happy.
all of it, it's not all money.
They're,
It's a significant
they
component.
find their
It's not
niche,
entirely-
like me, as an example, I came from a town of 1,000 people. I like being in a small town. I hate working in the city, I don't want to work in the city. Carl likes to raise chickens, just. He's got liver.
And because of that, they get longevity,
But
which,
we're
Really?
we're not the norm, I'll be honest with you, we're not the norm. I mean, and you're right, the police department Carl and I've had some talks, it's so competitive right now, it's just crazy.
Every police force out there.
Fort Lufkin, and they're adding on, and other agencies are just because they're growing.
Everybody's growing.
yeah.
Well, what
And we-
percentage of your police force lives in Platteville? Well, you live close.
Definitely
You live
not.
close. But, I mean, that's just it. You can't say, well, we're going to attract them here because this is a great place to live. Most of our employees don't live here.
The fire department's the same way. A lot of the fire department, they don't live here. They live outside communities in Denver, Thornton, Aurora. And they come here because they want to work in this department, this district.
But they also have spouses that have other jobs, and so a lot of times they're.
And Anadarko, when they were coming in, they said fewer than 10% of their workforce would ever live locally. They said, and they did a study, they showed us that study. It is simply the way it is. People in this country commute.
Right.
It's just, people are so used to it.
Yeah. So, the other proximity, that doesn't really bother me too much because, frankly, some people come here and they're just wanting to get enough PD, they're wanting to get enough time in to go to a larger department. They don't want to work in a small department. And we have officers like that. If they give us 3 years, I don't begrudge them.
I would like to get back to, sorry to interrupt you, but setting a policy at some time in 2018 when we do a mid-year review, and set a policy by the governing body that we don't have to have these conversations every year per se. You know, and I can get some more information from some of the other towns. Part of our budget, part of our cost of operations is our employees. And if we know the minimum insurance that goes up is 4.9%, which is ridiculously low this year, usually it's 7 to 8%, not higher, then I'd like to see the board set a policy that the minimum increase in any given year is 2%, as an example. And then depending on the money in the budget, when we look at the Brighton theory, you can add another 2 to 3% based upon evaluations.
So you can call cost of living raise, and then we can talk about it.
Well, and the employees in this community are an asset to the community, and we need to invest in them to maintain them and keep them happy.
So that's,
And I don't object to any of that. If that's the policy that you want to set, then we're all on the same page. But this was a trial last year to cover 2 years.
that's right.
And so I'm just saying, that's what I agreed to. I wouldn't have agreed to it for 1 year. It was large
And part of-
increases for 1 year.
Part of my thinking, Kim, is my gut feeling, I didn't think 2017 would be a good revenue year. And it hasn't been.
No, it hasn't been for us either.
No. I mean, unlike 3 years ago where we had a $500,000 surplus, we just took it to the bank, we didn't spend, we invested wisely. We put that money aside. Now we're talking about investment policy.
Right.
And, but anyway, Adrian, I know you wanted to say, sorry.
No, you're fine.
Just in passing, speaking of pay raises and cost of living, Social Security recipients for 2018 are going to get their first raise in 2 years,
Yeah.
2%. That's all I just want to interject that,
Yeah, they haven't gotten one for a long time.
because I happen to know that from personal experience.
Was it last year, Gloria said CDOT didn't get
Didn't get
raised?
any raise.
And I've looked around, I was talking to David Carlos, I don't know if Carlos in there, but I was talking to David earlier today. I've been asking around about public and private, you know, I don't look at indexes, I just call people. The company my son works for, who does construction, they're not getting anything in 2018. My other son, he's gonna get a 50-cent increase every 3 months. You know, it just depends on what he's doing.
Different markets, yeah.
You know, I've got another boy that is driving for UPS, he's locked in for 2 years, he's not gonna get a raise, but once you're in there, you get big raises. You know, it just depends on where you're going.
Those people
I've had people call me
Bonuses, too.
wanting to get me to come back to work
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
wages that I can't even fathom.
Mhm.
I mean, twice what I made before I retired.
Well, there's competitive job market out there, for sure.
Well,
The worker is.
it's a specific skill.
Yes.
That granted,
They can't
but they
find-
can't find people that
Fine.
can do, in my case, what I did for a living.
They left the industry.
And they will, yeah, sure, the smart ones.
And they had, you're right, they had, right, they had to do that.
I mean, I had a guy offer me twice scale. And I told him it wasn't enough money. Sorry.
I have to take responsibility for this. I came to Troy with this idea because I wanted to avoid the acrimonious arguments we have every year on this. So this was an experiment for me. I don't know if this is a success or a failure, I guess time will tell. But that was what, I just wanted to avoid the argument, because this is the one thing everybody dreads, and
Well,
every year.
And I think if we sit down and establish a policy that everybody's comfortable with, that's competitive with other communities. 'Cause you
Based
have-
on our income.
Well,
I don't disagree with that at this
A
point.
couple of years ago, we talked about wages first thing before we even got into the nitty-gritty budget. That was a rarity. But most years, on normal, we wait to see what's left, till we throw the
Yep.
crumbs to the employees. I'm tired of that mentality. We need to put the employees into the budget as far as assets, and set some money aside each year. That's automatic. Because in my opinion, I agree with both. Every employee's different. I talk to my department heads about that, not two officers are the same in the front office or public works. But if you're here, you're doing something right, or you haven't been fired yet. So if that's the case, I think you meet that minimum threshold that's built into the budget. Then you talk about your merit increase, or
Merit,
your merit.
cost of living
There's gotta be
needs
some
to
kind
be
of-
constant.
Some kind of carrot somewhere.
Well, that's just it.
For every employee.
I don't necessarily agree with just building a raise into the budget. I think a certain percentage should be given to you and your department heads to decide who it goes to and what amounts, and
And some towns do that.
that's the way it should be.
Some towns do that every year. They'll set a policy of percentage, and they just give it to the town manager, and he distributes it based upon evaluations.
I agree, because there's
But-
no way I know who's a good employee and who's bad.
But if we do that, then our hiring wages are never going to grow. Correct? They're gonna stay the same. And we need to stay competitive, or at least where we're at right now. I'm sure it's not going to see it get any worse.
How do you get to the assumption that the initial wage would not increase?
Because you're giving them an evaluation-based raise. Why would you pay some new guy coming in, new person coming in, the same amount of money?
Well, I mean, if you put it at the town manager's discretion, department head's discretion, they can build in a raise to the minimum too, as they see fit, to attract the people they want.
True.
To a degree, I agree with you. The only point I would disagree is that is how this board governs, just like the Congress is money. So you have to be careful how much of your authority you're willing to delegate.
Well,
No,
That-
it's
that's
not
my
allowed.
comment.
no, we don't. We set the budgets. That's what we do. We don't control the employees of this town. The town manager controls employees of this town. We simply set the budget, and we need to stay out of controlling the employees of this town. We need to stay out of making comments about employees of this town. We need to let the town manager run the town.
That wasn't my point.
Well, I just threw that out there. I'm not trying to jump on you, but what we say, what we do as town officials, we'll get back to employees and everybody concerned. We need to stay out of the management of the town. We need to manage the money of the town.
Exactly. Well, my point was that is how boards govern. So we have to be careful. If you're going to give a certain percentage to the department heads or to the department head, that's fine. And you're discussing minimum thresholds for new hires. That plays into that. It's just we have to, don't make everything a matter of policy so that we don't have any discretion if we want to exert some control over what's going on at a later time. I'm not talking about individual employees, I'm talking about the whole governing body.
You know, the one thing that
What
If you give a
what
minimum,
discretion are you talking
like
about?
every year, we used to give whatever percentage we give, and then it was, a lot of times it was across the board, and I don't really have a problem with that. But if we're going to do a minimum threshold and then some more on top of that, we just have to be cautious about how we delegate that out.
Well, I'm not talking about a minimum threshold. I'm talking about increase the budget and the town manager decides how to spend that budget.
Right,
It's our
but that
job
would
to make the budget. We make the budget. That's all we do.
That's right, and we make it to
And
where
we
we think
make
is
it-
what would be suitable for the town.
That's
You're
right.
exactly right.
But we do control wages.
That's
That's
right,
the
it goes
mechanism
into,
for doing that.
fits right into the budget.
Now, the one thing that bothers me
We
in
control
my
the
time on
wages
the board,
that way.
in one year we're doing,
We don't micromanage wages.
Exactly, I
We
agree.
control-
We're not
we control the
micromanaging, we're not
total.
micromanaging.
I didn't say we were. I didn't say we were. We're talking here about what our job is. We set the budget. We don't micromanage anything.
Correct.
We set the budget, that's it.
the one thing that's bothered me in the years that I've been trustee, that one year we're dealing with salary, the next year hourly. I think we need to address both each year.
Yeah, I agree.
We're getting too far behind when you're stretching it over 2 years just for salary and then another.
So what's next year gonna look like when we're skipping this year? I'm
We're
just
not
brought it up,
skipping.
it's more,
We're not
skipping, we gave them the raise for this
We gave
year.
them the raise
last
over the
year.
course of 2 years instead of a smaller raise last year and a small raise this year. We gave a bigger raise last year to cover 2 years. They're not being cheated.
So let me ask this, since we did, so did everybody get a raise last year? That was gonna cover, or did you still have that money sitting there where some people got raises and some people didn't?
It was given,
It was across the board?
it was given now.
And that needs to be done every year to keep them up competitive.
And then what sets our bottom threshold for a new hire? What's, you know, what, like, is brand new police officer, $43,000, what sets that threshold? And at what point, how does that increase with the economy and with what, you know, inflation and everything that goes on out there? What sets that level?
And that's part of why I was getting at about that fixed percent annually, because that helps keep that threshold going up.
Right.
Because, right,
We got you.
you know, and going back to the community state, you know, it's like, well, we can't compete with DPD or Long Lawn or whatever, we can't compete with Evans Public Works. They're doing the same job at just a higher population level. I get that. But there's something I mentioned during the first conversation. Dacono said this is the last year they're gonna participate in the survey, because they're gonna compete with Thorne, Westminster, Northland, and all them, because they lose so many employees. It's just, and one thing you gotta consider is, like in Carl's situation, we're fortunate to have Carl, but you won't find too many chiefs put himself on rotating shifts to cover his officers. Number two, for the longest time, he was the only FTO. He trained everybody. Now he's got sergeant, now he's got Scott Bob. But if I would've lost him, we would've been in disaster. So, if I would've lost Mary training new people every 6 months, I'd be in disaster. So we gotta
We've been there,
consider.
did that, we know.
You
what
have to
that-
consider the people who are still here, training all the new people. Because if you lose that,
well, but that's where we
Right.
give you money and you dole it out.
I,
Okay. But we're not doing that this year, apparently. So,
We are.
We already did it. He
we
doled it out.
already did
did
it,
it
kind of
for
a little
2
bit
years.
change the subject, but when we decide on some policies that we're gonna be looking forward to, this is government, but it's also a service-based industry. Service-based industries pay their employees 60% of their budget. That's 60% of their budget goes to employees. That's benefits, bonuses,
Who,
salaries.
what industry?
Service-based industry.
Service state.
That flies in the face of what the mayor of,
If you talk
what
to
town was it, said that it should be 20%,
20%?
20 or 24%. That's what he said during the mayor's summit year before last.
Well,
You can say
the
not
town,
20.
20% of the town's budget, you mean?
20% of the
Of
town's
the
revenue.
revenue. I'm guessing he said the revenue stream. I'm trying to remember. I had that discussion with Troy. I think it was 24%, if I remember right.
24%? In service-based industry, most, if you look and you talk to other mayors and other administrators in towns, especially surrounding towns, Firestone, Frederick, Meade, you name it, lots of surrounding towns, it's 60% of the revenue.
I'd go broke.
So right now,
I would go broke.
honestly, right now, you're not a service, you personally or the town?
My business, I would go
You're
broke
not
doing that.
service-based, you're product-based.
No, I'm on the shop.
Why?
Okay.
So I have to disagree with you on that.
Okay, well, we're sitting at 52%, and that is of the 2017 revenues. I'd like to see it go up a little bit, honestly. And then I'd like
Your
to see the
revenue go
number.
up a little bit also.
Well, but that's the point. If our revenues don't go up, then neither does the cost. Because you can't have your policy sustain it, right? But again, this is a little bit off
Need an
subject.
investment policy to raise your revenue.
I like that little plug,
He
Mr.
was
Clark.
right.
That was cagey. I think this is a good, solid discussion to have. If we want to make this a policy, then I think it's something we should do. My personal opinion for right now is if we change anything, we're gonna have a crisis, because we stand a decent chance that this budget will not pass. And I'm just the mayor, you guys have the votes, you can decide
I won't
what
vote
you want.
for it based on another wage increase because we already have a wage increase for 2018.
Yeah, I won't vote for the budget either.
I don't wanna go
That's
down this road,
unfortunate.
folks.
In your view, I represent the citizens. I promised a 2-year contract with large increases, and I'm representing the citizens still when I keep my word on that.
And that's great, because we're all sitting here to represent the citizens and do what we think is best for the town. What I think is best for the town is different than what you think is best for the town. It's different from, all of us are different, that's what's the beautiful part about a board.
Yes, I'm
So,
just
but
stating my view.
my saying that you're wrong because of the way you look at it is not fair. So when I can have the same conversation with the citizens that we both represent, and I can say, these people do a really great job, and in order to keep this great job going forward, we need to give them money.
And I did.
And I'm not saying you're wrong, I'm not saying I'm wrong, or you're right or I'm right. I'm just saying there's two different sides of one coin. So it's unfortunate that you guys will not vote for something and you're not willing to compromise. That's extremely
I have
unfortunate.
compromised
Oh my
continually.
gosh, we have compromised every single year, we have compromised.
But you're
Don't sit there and say
saying-
we haven't compromised.
But you're sitting here saying if we decide on anything different than what you are saying right now, you're not gonna vote for the budget. That's not compromise.
That's my opinion, based on the fact that I've already instituted a raise for this next year. We have a balanced budget. I compromise continually. You don't see this as compromise, but I also don't see yours as compromise. That's the difference between us. But you have a right to vote for the budget.
Right.
I am not stopping you.
So it's equally as fair for me to say, if you don't support giving employees raises, I will not vote for the budget. I'm not gonna do that because the budget.
That's not what we're saying. That is not what we are saying. No, it's not. That is not what we are
If there was
saying.
a raise, you would not vote for the budget.
No.
Another
We
raise.
gave them a raise last
That's
year.
what you said. You said if we put in another increase for Troy to work with, that you would
Another.
not pass the budget.
I will not.
We gave them the raise for
But
this
that's what you
year.
just said. That's what you, now you're saying you did say that.
No. If, I'm an employer, if I give employees 2 raises in 1 year, I go broke. I can't do that. I make the compromise, I come up with what I think is fair, and I give them a raise. 1 raise a year, not 2.
If you're an employer, you do whatever you need to
Yes.
make your business float.
And I
If
make
you're an
it
employer
comparable.
who needs employees, you might give them 3 raises in a year. So that just depends on what your organization needs to survive,
Yep.
all right? The opinion of some people is, in order for this town to thrive and survive, we need good employees.
And we have
And we
them.
possibly may need to pay these employees more in order to keep them. And to say, well, no, we're not gonna pay them more, that's an opinion. They don't need more, they don't deserve more. That is an opinion that some may have.
Everybody needs
Some may have another opinion
Yes.
that it's costing more to live in this state,
It is.
and our employees aren't getting any more. And they feel that isn't right either.
If we gave,
Really, did they
If
come
we
to you
gave-
and say they didn't think that was right? The
What's
employees
that?
come to you and say they didn't think that was
I
right?
don't talk to the employees.
Okay, then
It's
maybe
not
you
my
shouldn't be
job
making
to
that
talk to
comment
the
then.
employees.
if we gave a smaller raise last year, and then we gave a smaller one this year, it wouldn't be as much as a larger increase that we gave them last year. Over the course of 2 years, they've had that larger increase. And that's the way I view it. They have the raise. You guys keep saying they're not getting a raise. They're just enjoying it over the course of 2 years. They got double the raise last year because it was a longer term.
Was last year 2%?
Last year was $1 across the board for police and public works hourly fee.
And I didn't
So
contest it
hourly
because it
people
was
didn't
for
get
2
anything?
years.
Yeah, we got 50 cents.
I don't think Sawyer did anything last
So
year.
we didn't give raises across the board.
You
Mine-
just said that you did it across the board.
Hourly.
You didn't-
Public Works and Police.
But the salary happened the year before, correct? What did they
Everything
get the year before?
It's a percentage on the whole percentage.
This is crazy, we need consistency.
Yeah.
Well,
We need a policy.
that's what Troy was proposing, is that we set some type of policy. All right. We discussed the raise this year. All right. I'm not in any way gonna vote for or against the budget if we don't have a raise in it. My stance is, it costs more this year for our employees to live in this state, to survive. If we, as their employer, don't understand that, then we're not doing our job.
I fully understand.
If you fully understand it and still don't wanna give them a raise, that's
I
fine
gave him a
too.
raise.
We gave him a
We
raise.
gave them a raise last year, we already.
Okay, so then don't quit saying we're not giving him a raise. We gave him a raise for the 2 years. You keep saying we didn't give him a raise. We did.
We are not being unfair. We are staying with our promise of what we
See,
approved.
and that's fine. The way I understood last year's was, we were behind, we tried to bring them all up.
We're always-
I don't recall us saying, we're not gonna give them a raise next year, but you guys said we did.
But I pay attention during the meetings, and I know that. When
And I
approve
don't.
something,
I
I know
understand
it.
that.
No, I'm not saying you don't. But you're saying now you don't, but last year you approved it. When I specifically said.
I approved a raise last year because I believe they needed a raise last year.
So did I.
I based it on what I believe they needed last year.
But you also knew it was for 2 years, because it was specified for 2 years.
It was specified.
Is that what the motion
Oh,
was?
no.
Or it wasn't a motion to do a study session?
Yeah, it was
Never
not
mind.
an action item, it was a study session
Is
conversation.
there a record of that transaction? Is there any document to back up this discussion? It seemed to be a matter of intention of whether or
Well,
not.
ask the person that brought it up and asked us for the 2 years.
I don't have the written documentation.
Okay,
It was discussed.
I'm just trying, I wasn't a part of it, so I'm hearing two different versions of the same story. One that says it was for 2 years, one
Was it
that
for
says
2 years, Troy?
that it wasn't for 2 years.
I wanted to adjust the wages for police and public works, and what I told the mayor is that the revenues did not increase in 2018, I would not push for a raise.
It didn't increase.
Okay.
How much of the revenue increased by?
Right now, we're about 24,000 in revenues over expenditures in the general fund. That's an estimate on the budget. That's an estimate. We
Because
won't
we
know.
didn't have as many costs this year, right? We didn't have as many salaries to pay, because we're short on cops.
Yeah, our salaries for the year end in all major departments are less because we have turnover.
Yeah.
Well, that's different than how much revenue
Exactly,
increased. Okay,
exactly,
all right, just making sure
exactly.
we're all on the same page here.
I mean, overall, our revenue, the total increased over 100,000. Our
There you go.
expenditures caught it too.
So,
Yeah.
the agreement then would be no, because if revenues didn't, according to what Troy recalls here, I don't remember the agreement, so I'm going off of what you guys all said. Okay, I'm not arguing, saying it didn't happen or it did happen, I just don't remember. So, if revenues don't increase, we will not give employees raises for the 2018 year. Revenues increased by 100,000. I'm just repeating what I'm hearing, making sure.
I have a question.
But the expenses went up, so we have to, we can't, I won't, I'm not interested in being involved in deficit spending. You know, if we do anything at this point in time, we can push ourselves into that. And I had to deal with that when I came on board. And that was very unpleasant the first year. And Troy shared it with me. So we have to, I always caution everybody, we have to just make sure that we are revenue neutral at the very least.
Is it possible to, as a potential compromise over this entire conversation, to defer a decision 90 days, get a better grip on 2018's revenues, and make the decision at that time.
We have to finalize the 2018 budget, we can't adjust, we
December
can't
5th.
change it. Right.
You can't change it.
No. We committed to the
So that's
date.
not a
What
possibility.
do we
Wait.
do for 2019?
What did you have to change?
You're submitting a budget, you always make a budget as minutes if you want to, we always do that. So that's, you can't amend the budget, Steve.
Well, we can, but it's not anything I like doing.
I know.
We'd happy if we had.
We amend the budget.
Well, your personal tastes are to be recommended, but I'm just trying to find a solution to everybody butting heads over this
I would rather
pay
see
raise or not
compromise.
pay raise. And if you defer the situation 90 days or pick a number where you have a better fix on 2018's revenues, and you may have more specific numbers as to whether or not there are adequate funds to provide an additional pay increase, however modest that may or may not be, you'd be looking at it with current numbers, with accurate April 1st numbers, as just a certificate date out of there. And just an aside, I understand the policy to be from last year that it was over a 2-year, it was a 2-year decision. Fine. You may have to live with that. Going forward, I would recommend that it be annual decision.
Yep, I agree.
That's clear and going forward.
Well, right,
And that
and
covers salary
that-
and hourly at the same time.
that's
It's
the
not
way,
any of this.
that's the way we've done it, that's the way we've always done it in the past. I tried to avoid bloodshed this year, and I can see that I was unsuccessful.
When you're setting the policy with prior boards, I think when you first came on, when I first became manager, because we had a 3-hour conversation on this topic at the time, and we had to budget $100,000.
Then it was $189,000 over.
And I did over Thanksgiving, and we went back the next day.
You did
and
an
approved it.
incredible job. If I'd had
But
done
the
it.
board would like the fear before is, some board members in the past feel like they're losing control over that decision-making of whether an employee gets it. But I remember my first budget meeting here, the board at that time, way before you even started, they went around the table and they talked about, okay, Flood Works Director did like, we like him, blah, blah, let's give him the 3%. Then they went on the list. They actually did that in the budget meeting. I never want to go down that road ever again.
No, I couldn't agree more.
But I think, and like Mike says, this is, your policymakers, you set the budget, you control that. You're like, well, I'm doing my job, you get rid of me, that's the way it works. That's just a lie.
Putting it in a policy does sound rational. Having a 2-tiered policy also, because you are gonna, what Adrian said, you're gonna have to do something. Whatever you do, the starting wage has to reflect some kind of an increase year over year to attract people. I completely agree with that. That's, so, at some time, maybe if we want to make a policy and tier it like that, I have no problem with that. I tried this, and this obviously wasn't working, so
Well,
I'm ready to move on
Back
to
to
something different.
the tiering it, if we just if we wanna give a raise, I'm not saying we're gonna this year, because obviously we have a disagreement as to whether we are, and quite honestly, if we made them more money and we agreed to 2 years, then I'm not gonna fight it a lot. But what I wanna do going forward is set an amount to raise the wage budget. If we decide we're gonna do that every year, set the amount, give it to the town manager, and he decides how to do it, and take it out of our hands, which is not supposed to be in our hands to begin with. We set the money, he decides how to handle the employees. He decides how to attract them. If he needs to raise the starting wage, he decides how much he needs to raise that. He's got his budget, his job is to stay in the budget, and we stay completely out of it.
I agree, I like that a lot. It
We,
doesn't
of
have
course,
to
are
be
gonna have to
years.
decide on his pay, but that's the job we have to take.
In the past, that's pretty much the line we took, I think.
Well, if you do a two-tiered system, that says everybody's gonna get this much, and the better people are gonna get this much, yeah, you're doing that in a
Well,
way.
and I was talking about that, I was thinking about that strictly from the standpoint of what we would appropriate, not trying to control what he's giving out. It would just
We would
be,
give him a percentage increase in the budget, and he could give somebody a 5% raise, he could give somebody a 0% raise, whatever he thinks they're worth, how important they are to his organization, how important it is to keep them happy, and how much it's gonna cost to bring in new people.
exactly. Well, and that was the tiered thing, I thought maybe, because like Adrian said, how are we going to affect starting salaries?
Well,
And that would be one way
he
to do it.
affects the starting salary. He's gotta go out and hire those people, so he's gotta set a wage that's gonna attract the people he wants. And if it fits in his budget, he's gonna set that starting salary at the level which he thinks he needs to bring those people in.
I have to think about that, I'm not sure I go along with that, because we've discussed starting salaries before, now, not for hourly, so much as, but as for salary.
The board approves mine and the town clerk / treasurer,
Right.
and that's it.
Yeah.
Right, and that was what we did, and that was the discussions that we had, I really don't want to change that.
Well, and it's just like if you have business, you know how much it's gonna cost to get the employee you want to come in and start working for you, what that starting salary needs to be. We as a board do not know what that starting salary is, and we shouldn't concern ourselves with what that starting salary is. We concern ourselves with how much money we can afford to give him to get his employees.
I agree with you, Mike, you're all over it.
You want to reconvene in 3 to 6 months, or I would meet already in May to talk about other stuff, obviously.
I think May would be an excellent time to discuss this.
I mean,
You're gonna have a new board.
that's good or bad.
Well, I don't either, I mean, you could have a new mayor.
Depends on the day.
They should find out.
But it would be a different perspective.
Well, I think the perspective this time of year is always tense. We all know.
Agreed.
You know, I think going into a conversation, some community will start working on their budget earlier on, just on policy decisions, not numbers. And that's something I think we want to contemplate. I mean, the numbers is the driving force, I get that. The policy decision like we need to make on this needs to be made before the numbers come across.
You know, you got 12 months to work on it.
You know, I think that's a very cogent observation, because right now, you know, we've all been dealing with the numbers, everybody has a pet project they want, and it didn't fit, or for whatever reason. So everybody is sort of tense because of that. In May, we're on to bigger and better things. By that time, if we do a policy, make a written policy and enact it, maybe we could do it a lot more without the rancor.
Well, and I'll stop with this, but in my view, there's been years like last year where we have citizens sitting here in Schultz saying, you're gonna chip to Old Town, what about my road? The board, without, I wouldn't say hesitation, but unanimously dipped in the savings and spent another $200,000. You know, and I've got the employees doing that, they're making contracts, we're doing that. I'll never see the board dip in the savings and say, you know what, you guys need some money. That'll never happen, it never will. We'll do it for infrastructure, not employees. I want to set the employees' wages, like you were saying, built into a policy that isn't a long conversation every year.
Needs to be based on revenue, I think.
Of course, if we have a recession, we have a
Employees,
recession.
something they rely on,
Yeah.
and
But I
know
do
what their
know-
situation is ahead of time.
And I like your suggestion because I think it's a benefit to employees to talk about this quote mid-year because all the forecasts I'm getting. And I talked to the owner of Ready Services, I've talked to not Calfrac, but Anadarko, they're building up. I mean, Ready Services wants to bring in sandblasting stations, another 30 employees to the town. Old Castle Precast can't fill their orders, United Raymax is exploding as far as work orders. I mean, things are going again.
In some industries.
Hmm?
My industry is the ag industry, it's terrible shape, terrible shape. So not all ships are buoyed by what's going on.
Well,
So-
the growth, the job market's strong right now, the growth is, going to Colorado is just crazy. Absolutely crazy. I mean, our guys were talking about, I think David brought it up, was it Atmos or Excel was looking for guys, 3 meters for $25 an hour? $30 an hour, 3 meters, the meter guy.
He retires.
Holy cow.
Sign me up.
And then, it's like oil field. Yeah, they pay incredible things. And then something happens, and 30% of those people are out of a job tomorrow.
Well, there's industry moving here to Colorado, it's coming, and it's been coming.
Yeah, but if you
I'm more of an
look at the
agnostic.
picture,
I've seen this
everyone
go
else
like
is
this
going
too
up.
many times.
Oil industry, take that out of the picture, but
Yeah.
the growth of Colorado is growing dramatically.
Well, the manufacturing technology alone.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a good conversation to have in May. I concur. Is that what everybody agrees
I
on?
think it's a smart time to do it.
When the heat's off, is everybody good with that? Adrian?
I'm good with it. I don't know that changing the time of year is gonna take the heat off. I think we all feel very strongly on how we feel, and changing the time of year is gonna be different. This doesn't need to be a nasty discussion, it doesn't need to be hateful. I just would like to see compromise, that's all. And I feel like there's too much hatefulness in it, and it really doesn't need to be that way. Unfortunately.
I don't think.
I think almost
hatred.
every
We all
year it is
have
a
pretty
big
strong-
cut,
I
right?
don't think there's any hatred involved at all, we all had
Well,
strong opinions.
There's strong feelings.
There's strong feelings on both sides.
There's strong feelings.
And I know I said this last year, I'll say it every year, you know, our employees want to feel as though they're appreciated.
Yep.
All right? So we have to watch what we say, what we do, because we are representatives of the town, and that's another reason why I want to take it completely out of the board's hands, put it in the hands of the person who manages the town, and we should simply discuss the numbers that the town can afford, and he needs to come to us and say, hey, this is what I see, this is what I need, and we decide whether the town can afford it.
And I'm comfortable with that as long as we have Troy. Troy can never leave. So he understands the town and the employees.
Can we make a 10-year contract with you?
But other
We
towns.
want to
I
think every November he thinks about quitting.
Hey, Tony seems retiring in Hudson, they pay $25,000 more a year than my job, it's like, hey, it's half size town.
How dare you?
We're in Hudson getting all that money.
Other new subdivisions are building.
Really? Yeah.
They got a new town hall, new
So-
library.
They have
So
a
when we
truck
went
stop.
to that town and county dinner,
Truck stop.
just to make a note,
Amazing.
at the town and county dinner, there were 3 towns in Will County that were represented there. Anyway, 3 towns that were not growing. Pierce, Gilchrist,
Alt.
and Platteville. Was it Pierce or Alt?
Oh, that
No,
was-
Alt is
that-
growing.
That wasn't growing.
They weren't growing.
Yeah.
Pierce.
Alt is building a brand new
Yep.
subdivision, every community out there, and so.
There's
We
some
want,
of that
and that's what
business.
Troy brought up a couple months ago, we needed more revenue. We need to look at some growth and try to entice some development around here.
Just a little side note, yeah, I don't know that I want to be in the same class as those other 2 towns. But, just something to note. Everyone else was very proud of their growth.
Yeah,
And
it's hard to
we've got
understand.
communities that we're building, and that's it.
Well, you
Yeah,
know,
you
like
do like
small
it.
town, that's why we live here, but we don't wanna die either.
That's right,
Well, you, the board, control it because I mean, it's coming.
that's right.
We all know that, but right now, everything within town limits is, other than West Farm or Sawdust up north, I mean, you're gonna control that because it's gonna have to be annexed. And you have to decide the factor on that, what you want. But we need, we did our comp plan, we looked at residential and commercial growth in the future to the north, which is what we can service. So that's something that we'll take consideration when the time comes. Yeah, the person I'm working with, West Farm, right now is not looking at any residential, for that, you know. Big gravel mine.
Yeah, you all have to decide if you want to live in a big town or you want to live in.
Well, we're not gonna be a big.
Growing by
green
50
resort.
houses a year.
I don't wanna be
That's
a-
yeah,
big
I
town.
No, but that's a conscious
I don't wanna
decision.
be in a dying town.
That's
Right,
right.
exactly.
I don't know how that would
Yeah,
be
yeah.
possible
Yeah, this
in
town's
this
been
area.
around for many
I don't see how that would be
Well,
possible.
we got a Main Street that has a Mexican restaurant and a bar.
But they
Well,
talked
but-
about it, they said it was a thriving downtown in the seventies.
Yeah, it was.
The older people
Yeah.
talk about how it was
Well,
thriving in the seventies.
that's because you have to drive a long, long way to get to another.
Well, yeah,
bar or
probably, but
town,
if
you know,
we can
but-
bring it back.
I mean,
Well, that's all we gotta figure out a way to entice that development in our, on our Main Street.
Yeah, how are we gonna do that when King Soopers gonna be building stores all over the place?
I'm not sure we'll get a king.
Mayor, we done?
I hope so.
Okay. All right, we'll do the packet out by Friday. We'll meet next Tuesday, 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
It'll be a fairly long agenda.
I want to thank the staff for coming and sitting through.
So, thank you, Mary.
Yeah, go through next Tuesday.
Mary, I really appreciate all you're doing. Hey, that's great.
Wow.
Because you're dying, it's very nice.
Hey, back for all that. We're starting to build.
Oh, hallelujah. And I did, oh, okay. Oh, well, that makes it like going down.
I spent my young years
Little
sitting in
over
the
whatever.
truck. Well, I was driving.
This is the first meeting in November.
You got a straight.
See y'all later. It's been a while. Check, did you say report? Okay, just check and make sure. So I think it's been since the first meeting in November.
I have a card and
You put it in your bottle, and you just like it.
Sorry, my different hat. I can, do I need to schedule
The house or here?
No, it's at my work.
Let me know, I'll come do it for you. Is it a regular venture?
Yes,
Not one
no,
that's-
it's just a regular one, we're getting it put in our name so we can sell it.
What's your address?
It's, 13730, Deerfield. Do you know where Black Canyon is?
So, you know what?
Oh.
So Deerfield is just the road on the east side of it. And we're very
I was like, I used to think when I was younger, that beer.
You don't know.
When are you there?
From 8 to there.
Yeah.
Are you sure?
No.
I like that.
All right. All right, we'll see you tomorrow.
All right, have a good one.
So, yeah.
Still kicking that idea.
I think you have to hear that in part, like wine. So my wife used to like the sweet wine, and now she's sweet. She's more into the more like.
If I drink a wine, it's only whiskey.
Yeah. And so you kind of.
There's one called Red Root Beer from Prairie Berries, the brewery up in, South Dakota.
Yeah. My mom